Thank you, everybody, for joining in today. This Cosmo Campfire is focused on the timesheet and expense approval. I am your host, Lexi, and I've been with Aprika over a little over 4 years and in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 6 years now. On the agenda today, we will be looking at approving and rejecting timesheets and expenses, also how you're going to log them and different things like that. If you have any questions during the demonstration, please enter them into the chat or into the Q&A section. It does not have to be related to timesheet and expenses. After the demonstration, we will review any questions over the call. I can also share my screen and review any examples in my sandbox here. The main objectives today is that we understand the timesheet approval options, how to submit the timesheets for approval, approving and rejecting, and then what happens after we reject those timesheets, how can the users get their time logs back to the person that needs to approve them, as well as for expenses, so understanding the options and so forth and so on. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and start with the settings. So there's a few things that you'll want to set up for your resources when considering your timesheet and expense approval, and that will be the person that is going to do the approving. So on the role mission control role record, you'll want to assign a timesheet approver. And then in the expense settings, you'll want to assign an expense approver. Now, another thing to note, I'm not sure if it's going to let me set it to myself. So what I had to do is create some test records prior to the call. I'm going to go ahead and set this to Mick Fanning, the same user that is approving my timesheets, and then my mileage rate. Another thing you'll want to consider is the daily digest. In the daily digest, you'll also be able to review any time logs that you need to approve, as well as your expenses and any that have been rejected. So as a resource, you'll want to keep an eye out for that in case you need to update your notes or anything like that to resubmit your time. All right, so once we have the role set up, you'll also want to consider your project settings. So in this project, I have the approval settings set to my project owner. So my project owner is myself. In my approval settings, there's a field called Project Owner Timesheet Approval Required, as well as the role manager. This is going to pull the timesheet approver from my role or the person that is logging time. Okay, I'm also going to scroll down to the expense area here, and I've also set for the project owner to approve any expenses occurred against this project. And then your role manager expense approval. So that'll pull from the role record. You can also submit expenses that are not related to a project, and those can be reviewed from your expense list view. So let's go ahead and get started with time logs first, and then we'll review how to get this all going for your expenses. So what I'm going to do is log time to one of the actions here. And I don't have any validations to ensure that notes are kept in my time log. So that is going to be something that I note for this user when they submit their time so that they can resubmit it. All right, so my person comes in here, they log their out. Oh no, that was supposed to be 0.5. They log their hours. I'm going to come over to this time log tab so that we can review any open time logs. And like I said, I'm the project owner on this project, so any of the ones on here will need to be approved from myself. So let's go ahead and update the hours completed on this one. All right, so since that automation was set and I've created my time log after the settings were defined in the project detail, you can see there are a few fields that automatically update. So when I create my time log, it went into pending status. That means that it's still in draft. So I still can make any changes and different things like that before I submit it to my approver. Once it is in submitted status, it will go to the approver for approval or rejection. You can do that from the individual time log record, like how I've done, where I just hit edit. And there's a few other places where you can update your pending time logs. So let's take a look at that. I'm not going to update it from here. I'll show you the other areas. As we can see, no role manager approval is required. And from my project settings, my project owner approval is required. It automatically updated who the approver would be, and it set the status to pending as well. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. All right, so just taking a quick look at the time logged against this project, I have some that are pending, some that are submitted, and some that are already rejected, okay? So as the approver, there's a few places that I can go to review these time logs. I can go to my timesheet, or I can go directly to the time log object. All right, on the time log object, we have a few list views that are already created. We have time logs requiring your approval and your rejected time logs. I can also create another list view to review my pending time logs, okay? So let's just hop over to, I want to keep that page open. Let's hop over to our timesheet and review how this will show up. Now, there's so many different ways to log time. You have your log time utility down here. You have your mobile app time logger. You have your timesheet and different things like this. It will all arrive to the same place. So now that I'm on my timesheet, I can see here I have, for my own time logs, I have one pending, one submitted, and two rejected. The first thing I will want to do is submit those pending time logs. So to do that, I will come over here and just save and submit my entire timesheet. That will set all of my pending time logs to submitted. Otherwise, you would have to navigate to that time log and update the status to submitted. Okay, that can also be done while creating the record. All right, so now we can see that those time logs are submitted. I have two, and then there are 0 that are approved, 2 that are rejected. We'll take a look at that in a second. So it looks like the ones that are pending, it didn't want me to approve myself. So let's take a look at who is required to approve those time logs. That is for Mick. And Mick still has his time logs in pending status, which is why I cannot see his approval. Since I do not have his login, I'm just going to go ahead and update these to submitted manually. All right, that's looking better. Now let's go back to this timesheet and hit a refresh. And I should see some marked for approval. Okie doke. All right, so on my timesheet, now that I have records to approve, you can see that they've already updated. I have a new tab that appeared for approvals. I can go back in time and forward in time to review time from different periods if there are any. First thing I will do is click on the resource that I would like to review their time. I can see this is against the Aprika project, any hours completed against the project. I have my chatter here in case I need to reach out to the resource and update any time log information. You can customize this screen here as well as the rejection screen from your time log object. So if you go into Object Manager into Field Sets, you can update the timesheet approvals and rejection tab fields, just in case there's other fields that are including your business processes. So this one looks all good to go. I don't have any rejection comments, so I'm going to go ahead and approve this one and hit save. Otherwise, if there were any issues, I would hit reject and enter why I'm rejecting this time so that the resource can update it as required. So let's go ahead and save that. All right, that went through fine. And now let's take a look at the rejection. So these are time logs that I've submitted to the project owner that were not approved. So when I come to this tab, it shows that a few details from the action. But when I scroll over to the actual rejection comments, uh, the first one is rejected without comment. It's most likely because this is non-billable, unavailable action. So let me update this. As you can see, I just hit the edit pencil over to the right. I can also hit the edit pencil at the top to edit all of them. And then it looks like my second one was rejected because I logged non-billable time on a billable task. So let's uncheck the non-billable. This one has notes. Let's update the notes on this one. All right. All right. Everything is looking good. Dates are looking fine. And now we want to submit these. So since I've updated them both, I'm going to submit all of them from this button to the upper right. If there are a few that I want to submit individually, I can do that from directly next to them. All right, so all of that has been updated. One thing I would also like to note is, like I said, this information will also be included on the resources daily digest. So when I received my daily digest this morning, it had all of my tasks, checklist items, and so and so. But at the bottom, I had an approval summary that I have one expense to approve. I had two rejected time logs and one rejected expense. Okay, so the two rejections for my time logs were resolved. Let's go ahead and take a look at our expenses. Just refresh this and make sure I approved everything. I have two more for approval. Since I'm the project owner, I can also approve from the list view. So that's another way to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the expenses. First, let's go back to the project and review the ones logged against the project. There's a expenses tab that gives me a summary rundown. And taking a look at the ones that were created already, I have one in submitted status, one in pending status, and one that is rejected. So similar to my time logs, I am going to go to the expense object. All right, I can see that I have one expense record that is requiring approval. So since I'm the project owner, I will go ahead and mark this approved. There is no role manager approval required. If you are not the resource that is assigned as the approver, it will not allow you to update it. But also it wouldn't come up in your approval list. All right, so since I'm just the project owner, I've updated just the project owner field, and that's marked this entire expense as approved. Let's take a look at those pending expenses. Now, when creating your expenses, it's a little different. You can um, go into the expense manager, and there's a submit expense button from there. Let me just take you there really quick. This is the expense logger. And when logging your expenses from here, you can go ahead and submit them. So as I'm logging them, I can save and submit from the expense logger. That will update the status on them. But since I didn't create them here, I'm just going to go to my pending expenses and set the status to submitted, which is going to go to my approver, which is also myself. Ha ha ha. Going to set these to approved. And then lastly, we will review any rejected expenses. All right, so this one is rejected because I needed to update the date and the status for this one. So let's update this. I would have to set it to submitted, change the date, it was inaccurate. It's actually Monday. And submit. All right now. Expenses requiring my approval also went to myself because I am the project owner, you guys. Set this to approved. And now we have it approved. So that's how you fix time or expenses that have been marked rejected and need updating. Okay. Another new cool feature to mention while we're here is that you can also now export your time log PDF and generate it from here to print and share with clients. Does anyone have any questions so far? Any questions? We can also open up for questions that are not related to time logging, and expense approval. A lot of great options here, as well as having the ability to chatter from the rejections page and approvals page and different things like that. What up, Cardo? I'm sorry, you don't have to. There you go. I've unmuted you. You are now able to talk if you would like to ask your question.
Hi, quick question. How do we make comments required for when people are submitting time?
That would be a validation rule. So what you do is you'd come to the setup. You would go to your time log object. And I have another question that just came in as well. Come into your validation rules. And what you would do is that you would say, send an error when time log notes is null equals null or is blank. And anytime a resource tries to save a time log where that field is blank, it will not allow them to save it. Now, one thing you'll want to note is that you'll have time logs that were previously created where they have not entered nodes or different things like that. You want to make sure those are updated as people go, because if they go and edit it, then it will error them out and tell them no log nodes.
Thank you.
No problem. Uh-oh. No errors found. So yeah, you would just define what your message is, and different things like that. Next question is, the can you review the picture of the receipt as the reviewer? Oh, okay, got it. All right. So if I came in, if I came into the expense logger, I can add an image here, but I'm gonna go with the time logger at the bottom. I love this thing. Fill in my details. And let's say I add in an image. All right, gonna add an image here. All right, so it says that my image is uploaded. And we're gonna save and submit so that it goes to approver. Um, since the component for this one is different than the timesheets, you'll just be seeing your approvals from the list view. So for this one for 300 miles that I just entered, I would actually have to go into the record and review the notes and attachments to see that file before approving or denying it. All right. You're very welcome.